Tonight we have somebody coming to speak that was very, very, very close to Parker. It's his sister Emily. And I want you to give her the utmost respect. And here's the deal. She's going to challenge you. And here's your tendency. Right now, here's your tendency. You're going to want to tune this out. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you for 20 minutes. Just to focus on what Emily has to say. And I guarantee you will profit in life because of this. Alright? What you're doing right now is what I want. You're awesome. You're respectful. You're quiet. You're paying attention. So, if you would, Emily, come on up.
Separation anxiety, so hopefully you guys can make it 20 minutes. I know I can, so I'm proud of you. So I'm Emily Jackson. I'm excited to be here with you guys for the first middle school Legacy Lacrosse Cup. We've been doing this for 5 years, and this is the first time that we have middle schoolers, so it's a big deal. So I grew up, like Chad said, with brothers. I had 2 younger brothers, Parker and Ben. So because they were boys, sports was just a big part of our lives. I mean, we thought about sports, talked about sports, played sports all the time. And somehow they always managed to control the remote, even though I was the oldest. So I just watched a ton of ESPN and SportsCenter, which to this day, I think I only know the ESPN channels on the TV. And so SportsCenter is my favorite. And some of you guys probably know the SportsCenter commercials. Well, those are like my favorite commercials. So my favorite right now is the one with the Manning brothers, and they're walking through ESPN, and they're like kicking each other, tripping each other, giving each other wet willies, and it always just makes me laugh. And then I love like the Under Armour commercials, and they have like the boom boom clap, and then it always, at the end of the commercial, I'm like ready to go for a run, or like ready to go play sports. It just gets me like really fired up, so I really like that commercial as well. What about you? What's your favorite commercial?
One of those two.
What are those? They think alike. What about you?
The Doritos.
The Doritos commercials? So the thing about commercials is that you actually remember commercials. You talk about them, you YouTube them, you quote them. I mean, everybody knows, like when I talk about those commercials, you know what I'm talking about. They leave an impression. What are commercials supposed to do? They're supposed to communicate something about the company. They're supposed to tell you about their brand and what they stand for, what they are. So let's think about this. What if the commercial is your life? What's your brand then? What's your brand communicating? So how many of you guys have heard of the Legacy Lacrosse Cup before? Oh my, okay. How many of you guys have been to the Legacy Lacrosse Cup before? Okay, most of you, that's great. So Chad told you a little bit about Parker, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on the Legacy Lacrosse Cup and how that came from Parker. So Parker passed away 5.5 years ago, and our family decided that we didn't want Parker to be remembered for the tragedy, but we wanted Parker to be remembered for his life. So we started the Legacy Lacrosse Cup in honor of him, and we tried to pick out a couple things that were really at the core of who Parker was and bring that into the essence of the tournament. So you'll see these throughout your experience this weekend, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have already experienced some of the Lacrosse Cup, so you should have seen these already too. But the first one is character, and the second one is athletics and competition, and then the third one is friendships and being inclusive. And those are just the things that made Parker who he was. Those are the just elements of his core. And so we tried to bring all of those things together this weekend. So hopefully you've gotten to see a little bit or a glimpse of Parker's impact and hopefully how that's translating into the tournament. So let's go back to the commercials. So there's a commercial on right now that's by Liberty Mutual. I think the tagline is responsibility, pass it on. And it's not one of those commercials that's very funny and you probably don't stop. It's like, oh, I'm so glad this commercial's on. But usually by the end of the commercial, the room has gotten quiet and people are just sort of sitting and watching. So in this commercial, it's where like a little boy drops his stuffed animal and someone else picks it up for him, and then somebody sees that happening, and then they decide they'll open the door for someone who's blind. And someone else sees that happening, and then they see a cart about to fall on someone, and they move that person out of the way. So the whole idea is that good goes around. So when I was thinking about what commercial do I want my life to be, I want my life to be that commercial. I want to be the catalyst for good goes around. That's what I want to be. I'm sure some of you are thinking you probably could pick more of a commercial. You're probably right. But the point is not that it's maybe a cheesy commercial, but this could be real life. So I'm going to tell you a story about Parker and a real life story about him that makes this real. So Parker, I already told you, was super competitive and super athletic. I used to joke that you could drop Parker in a water polo pool and he would have been fine. He just was a really gifted athlete. And he was also so competitive to the point that like wiffle ball was the World Series and every front yard football game was the Super Bowl. And that's just how he always played sports, no matter where they were. So when Parker was younger, he had a whole football thing going at recess, and we would come home from school, and all he would tell us, like, how was school today? He's like, oh, I scored 2 touchdowns at recess, and it was like, okay, that was clearly the only thing that was important that happened to you at school today. But he just loved football at recess. So one day it was Parker's turn to pick teams. And he's looking at all of his friends who are standing in front of him, and they do this every day. He knows who's the fastest, he knows who can throw the farthest, and who's got the good catch. He knows all of that stuff. But he sees another kid who hasn't really played football as much, and he wants to play for the team. And Parker looks around him, and his first pick, he picks this new kid. And what was unique about this student is that this person had a prosthetic leg from the knee down. And that's just who Parker was. You know, he was going to pick that kid first. And it's not, that story's touching, but it's more important that it's real. Those are his values, and that was who his character was. And so, as you think about Parker's story and Parker's impact, we want to challenge you with the Legacy Lacrosse Cup to see what's your impact, what's your story going to be. And we believe that your story is going to be made up of a couple components. So one of those components is that you are uniquely hardwired with God-given talents that only you have. And those are the things that come most natural to you. So the things that you are good at without even trying. And we want you to share those all the time, every day, not on special occasions. Don't save those. Those are to be shared all the time. That's what you can bring to the table, and that's what you can use to influence other people. So don't think that it has to be a special occasion, you have to wait for it. Another thing is that you have to live intentionally and think with purpose. So I want you guys to think about sort of where you're going. If you start thinking about a direction and you say, like, I really want to get there, I think I want to go do that, there are a lot of choices that you have to make along the way. So if you were in a car, there'd be a lot of turns you have to take and a lot of different decision points you have to make. So let's think about this if you were trying to go to Florida. You get in the car, you have the car all packed, you're ready to go to Florida, and you get on the highway and you go north. You're headed towards New York City. It doesn't matter that you really want to go to Florida and you're wishing you could go to Florida and you think you should be in Florida. You're not making choices along the way that are going to lead you to Florida because you've taken turns that are taking you to New York City. So think about that in terms of your life. What does that look like? You have to make choices along the way so that you can get to where you want to go. And then the last one is you grow when you make a difference on other people's lives. And so this takes some courage. It takes some courage to do the hard thing. And that's not always the cool thing to do, and I know you guys hear that message all the time, but it also is hard to do the right thing when no one's looking. And someone once described integrity as what you should be doing when no one else is looking, and I think that that's really difficult when no one's going to give you the pat on the back or the recognition to say, hey, good job, like you did the right thing. And so I would challenge you guys to think about how can you do the right thing and do that because that's who you are. So that's a little bit about what we think you have an opportunity to have an impactful story. Your story does matter. And I don't want you to think that Parker's story is impactful because there's tragedy associated with it. But you have an opportunity to have an impact even in the small things. Parker's story is that he made an impact on that one student at recess in elementary school. But that's how Parker is remembered by that student. So how do you want to be remembered? You have an opportunity to matter. So we have a little activity for you, which is why the lacrosse balls are sitting on your table. So I think they're going to pass out some pens, but before you guys get started on this, I just want to tell you what you're going to write. So we're each going to have a lacrosse ball, and we're each going to write something on this lacrosse ball. So we've talked a little bit about your brand and what you want to be remembered for, and what do you want your legacy to be, because you have a chance to live that legacy now. So this word could be something like generous, it could be something like honest, it could be something like kind, someone who's inclusive. What do you want to be remembered as? So I want you to take a minute. I don't want you to talk to your friends, because I hope that you all have different things you want to be remembered as. So write down on your lacrosse ball what you want to be remembered as, and then I'm going to come back to you in like 30 seconds. So are you guys still waiting for, who's still waiting for a pen to write their word? Is anybody, one of you guys, I'll just keep writing your word, and we're going to go ahead and talk about it a little bit. So for me, I wrote a word down, and the word that I wrote on my lacrosse ball is servant. So I want to be remembered as someone who serves the people that I work with now that I have a job, the people that I am in contact with just regularly. I want to serve the people who are close to me, my friends and family. I just want to be the person that's going to do whatever needs to be done for someone else. That's what I want to be remembered as. Now, the question is, if someone came up to your best friend and said, how would you describe Emily? Do you think that the first word would be whatever you wrote on your lacrosse ball? So if someone came up to one of my friends and said, how would you describe Emily? I don't know if servant would be the first word that they would use. I would hope I'm close most of the time, but I don't know that I'm there all the time. So what about you? You have a word written on your lacrosse ball. Is that how people would describe you today? That's how you want to be remembered. Is that what people would think about you now? And if it's not, how great do you have? I mean, you guys have all of high school, you have all of college, you have so much life ahead of you. You get a chance to make that word your legacy. So what are you going to do? What's your next step? So I challenge you guys as we sort of finish writing our words on our lacrosse balls. What are you going to do? How are you going to change to make that word the legacy that you want to live? So hopefully you'll put this lacrosse ball, throw it in your lacrosse bag, stick it in your locker. Maybe you'll find it again after summertime, which is hard to believe it's around the corner, but maybe you'll find it again, and it'll be a reminder and a motivator for you to remember that your story matters. So thank you guys for being really respectful, and my encouragement to you this weekend is just to remember that your story does matter and to live a legacy.